The biggest mistake is that people look at it as a planning tool. And so they go into execution mode. And innovation is a mindset. There's a methodology that helps you carry out that mindset, but innovation is a mindset. And so it's the job of the trainer to explain that and prime the audience to be ready for that, because very few people in the world have a job of being an innovation manager, innovation director. Most people think of, I have a job description that says, here's the jobs to be done. And nowhere in that job description is there, I need to fail. But innovation comes with that job description. The job description is simple. Get out there and fail as much as possible, as quickly as possible, and as cheaply as possible.
I'll make it as a coach, light the spark inside, empower every soul to turn the tide. I'll make it as a coach, help others grow, changing lives with every story I know.
Have you ever put out an offer to the world and found that nobody wanted to buy it? At MetaFox, we had this experience quite a few times. For example, last year, we tried building a training program on creating deeper experience with our coaching cards. And only few people were interested in buying it. Maybe you know that situation. For us, I always thought this was a marketing problem. The few people who had attended the workshop were actually quite enthusiastic. But maybe there's still issues with how we design and frame the offer and how that connects to our customer persona. So today I'll explore with Paris Thomas, who's not only a leadership trainer, but also an experienced innovation consultant, how we as entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, consultants can leverage AI and methods like the business model canvas and customer segmentation to really revolutionize these kinds of innovation processes. I'm Tobi from MetaFox, and welcome on this demo episode of The Making of a Coach. You can firstly listen to Paris and me, and later it might also be worth getting out your phone and checking what's happening on the screen. Enjoy, and let's go. So on our last session, we explored and really got to know in depth Paris, the leadership development trainer. But there's also a different side to you. That is Paris, the innovation consultant. You started the first startup accelerator in Cyprus, and you've also worked as a consultant for Strategizer. And that makes me wonder, what brought you from leadership training to innovation?
Thank you, Tobi. Yeah, on the last episode, we also explored Paris the geek. And those things are related because from a young age, as far as I can remember, when I was 8 years old, I disassembled my parents' TV set and still never put it back together. But I've always tinkered with things. When I went to do my graduate studies, I always had this dream of becoming an inventor. So I would build things. I applied for patents. I would use CAD software, early days of Google SketchUp, if you remember this. This was like early 2000s. And just find a way to visually manifest my ideas in such a way to either get traction or use that to do something with it. I have a huge folder of ideas that I've kind of tinkered with. But at some point, I came across this book called The Art of Innovation by Tom Kelly, who was the CEO of IDEO, one of the leading firms and the one that popularized the design thinking methodology. And that's when I had the sort of an aha moment that it doesn't mean that I have to be an inventor, but I can be an innovator. And I saw how my personality and sort of like my love for communication and getting people to work better together, coupled with innovation as a discipline, could find home. So that was kind of like the beginning. And then sort of through my career, starting my own company in learning and development, I got into entrepreneurship, which is all about innovation and being agile and looking at that mindset. And eventually at some point crossed paths with Alex Osterwalder, who is the inventor of the business model canvas, the value proposition canvas, 5 best-selling books, all sorts of great stuff that's now being considered as the #1 toolkit for innovation and value creation around the world. So that was back in 2012. I was also running 2 other startups. We started the accelerator. I had my own startup. I had the learning and development company. For some of you who are listening to this, you might be wondering, that's not a good thing. And you're right, it's not. I had way too much dilution of focus, but a lot of love for exploring and figuring out things. My journey led me to work closely with Alex Osterwalder to deliver this toolkit to other corporates. I worked a lot with startups, 300 to 400 startups a year. I would train. We co-founded the largest global green ideas competition called Climate Launchpad with a partnership with the European Union. That got me to travel all over the place to train entrepreneurs. But then you realize that startups don't pay. The same mindset is also very useful for corporate startups. And that's where I ended up using as my playground to go and deliver value to them. So I've used innovation tools. I've coached hundreds of teams. I've seen ideas go from a shower. Somebody had the thought of an idea all the way to now we're in the market selling a product. I've experienced what the pivots are. And I know what it means like to go home after you realize you need to pivot and cry in an embryonic position because you're sad. But then eventually with time, you realize that you've been educated by the market. Basically now we're in 2025. And in the last 2 years, I've followed a journey that allowed me to answer the question of, is AI one day going to take over my job? Is AI going to sabotage my job as a consultant and advisor on topics of innovation and entrepreneurship? And the best way to answer that question was to do it. So we built the tool that fired me. And now we have Rapid Visual as a spin-off of our venture studio here, where we basically created an AI that is almost on a daily basis scaring us as to what it can do. And it's still early days, but it's getting a lot of traction. I'm very excited about it.
Mm-hmm. So as an innovation consultant, you are building the innovation consultant to replace you. But in some ways.
And what the future holds.
Exactly. Yeah, and if I check out your YouTube content, your posts on LinkedIn, you talk a lot about experimentation and about failure. You just mentioned it. What would be an example from your entrepreneurial path?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's a few that come to mind, but I think the one that's more entertaining for me is that in 2017, I embarked on a journey, to cut a long story short, as to why we got into it. But it was very exciting at the time to create something that adds value to the world of 360-degree video. So at that time, we were kind of very excited. We had a technical co-founder who we built a 4-axis stabilized gimbal with 9 GoPro cameras on it that today is this.
Uh-huh.
But that's not our.
So anybody who's just listening, not watching, Paris is holding a kind of 2-sided camera into the camera.
Yeah, there's a 2-sided camera that gets 360 video with better stabilization than what we were able to create ever with our rover that was remotely controlled, that walked into a scene that Netflix was going to buy and make 360-degree videos that never became a thing. So a lot of assumptions. And, you can be the best doctor in the world, but you're the worst patient. So everything I was telling my clients to do, I didn't follow that advice. The best advice I realize now is that you need to have good mentors. I didn't have good mentors because I was a mentor. So why would I need a mentor? That was a big lesson learned. Nowadays, I have an advisory council of people telling me what I need to hear. That is really important because we focused on building the technology instead of figuring out if there's a market for it. We spent some money, we invested in it, we spent time. The key thing is to understand, to make it simple, there is always going to be assumptions about what your ideal future looks like. So my rule of thumb is if you can build something in less than 2 weeks, build it first. Get that off your chest. And then go test with the thing you built. But if you can't build the next electronic vehicle, figure out ways to experiment. And there's many ways nowadays that we know to get out in the market and get some really good evidence data points to help you course correct that idea towards a better place. And that's what we built Rapid Visual for, is the ability to help you have that conversation with your team and be able to figure out, what does the business model look like? What else could it look like? How can I align with my team so I can begin my work towards validating if I should build it?
Yeah. So in your story, you got super excited about this idea of this fisheye camera, and your assumption was people would be excited about that as well. The viewers would be excited. Maybe the likes of Netflix would be excited to use that sort of hardware. And then you realized after spending lots of time and possibly money, that's not the case.
Yeah. And a year and a half later, we decided to shut it down because it wasn't going to go anywhere. And already GoPro and DJI came up with cameras that basically did what we were trying to do with hardware. They did it with software way better. But the biggest learning I got from that experience, which has become one of my top pieces of advice I give to my clients, about a year and a half into this venture, I was visiting New York on a mission with my accelerator to meet with investors for the startups that I was coaching. And as a geek, I went to the ultimate Disneyland for electronics, a shop in New York called B&H Photo. And for those who might not know B&H Photo, imagine an entire New York City block, 3 floors high, only electronics. And so I went there and there was an entire section on 360-degree video. And I went to find the salesperson in that section who was educated, not only by understanding the technology, but more importantly, by talking to customers all day long. And I had a 1-hour conversation with him. I never told him what we were trying to build. I was just quizzing him. only to realize that nobody cares, nobody's buying, and this section is going to be dismantled soon because DJI and GoPro are coming up with something new very soon. If only I had known that on day one, which was a year back before that, right? So it wasn't that far ago. And then my advice that I give to people is that when you're you're thinking of building a product or a service, find something adjacent to it, something that's similar that you probably will be competing for the same job to be done. Find the person whose job is to sell that thing and take them out to dinner. Heck, pay for their vacation and spend a week with them if you can. They're a gold mine because they are interviewing customers all day long because it's their job. And obviously that's not always possible, but what we help to do is get people to understand that you need to get out of the building and talk to potential customers. You cannot outsource that to consultants. You need to get out to listen to it. And so we basically have a systematic method that allows you to do that. We're now in the process, myself and a fellow advisor from Strategizer, Christian Dahl, who basically together we invented this system of how to get you prepared and out to have conversations with customers. And we're now in the process of actually writing that as a book. So very excited for that.
Yeah. Awesome. And I love that example because if we now get back to our audience, coaches and facilitators, probably very few of them would say, yeah, I always wanted to build a camera. And thanks for that advice, Paris. Of course, this sort of fallacies, they are also out there waiting for us if we build a new coaching offering or a new training program, or maybe an online course or even a webinar or an email course. So I'm wondering, what sort of learning or advice from this product innovation world is underused from the perspective of facilitators and coaches?
Well, why don't I show you?
Yeah, let's do that.
Why don't we take MetaFox as an example and use AI to do the work that we would do in 2 days, but let's do that in 7 minutes.
Okay.
All right.
What we've been trying since a year already is also putting out training offerings for our clients. How can I best work with the Stronger You strengths cards? Or how can I use the power of pictures in my coaching and facilitation practice? We thought, let's not build a 3-day program or even a 7-day journey, no boot camp like you're doing. But we thought, let's build this 90-minute training program. And the people who attended were also really enthusiastic and loved it. But we also figured, this 3-hour thing, it's kind of too small. It's not a certification. I cannot say I'm now a better coach. But it's also too big to just be a webinar where let me take half an hour during my lunch break to get a small prompt, small teaser.
What you're describing is the constant leadership dilemma where you're wondering what is the better thing to apply. And the only way you're going to get answers is you keep trying different ways and keep failing until you don't fail. And so what you learn there is that shorter will probably echo more. And this is the world we live in. I mean, our course was 5 weeks when we started. Who wants to do a 5-week course? They want it in 5 hours or 5 minutes if you can give it to them, right? If I could plug into their brain, they would choose that every time. Nobody's going to sit there to watch 5 hours if they could plug in for 5 minutes and get an upgrade in their mind. So that's a way to frame things. And the way to get to those conclusions is through coaching and mentoring or with the help of AI. So why don't we do this? We'll take your business model, which will include products as you preambled, but then we can edit it. And one of the key things to know is that the way we created this AI tool is to allow you to edit things. It's not a place where you make decisions with AI. AI gives you better alternatives so you can decide where you want to take it and also be able to edit it. So start from a place of edit is our mantra here. And the way to do that is, first, let me show you. Are you ready? Should we get into it? This is Rapid Visual that helps you make smarter business strategy decisions. And so it does that by instantly visualizing those strategies with AI-trained experts and guided insights. So there's a lot of IP that's in here from the world of innovation, from my experience and other people in my network who basically come together to say, let's train this thing to do our job. And so that's the visual, that's the home page that you can kind of browse through, but it allows you to do certain things that you can see that are quite visual. Now I'm logging into a dummy account I call Garage. And in Garage, I have a few examples I usually do as demos. So first thing I'll do is I'll create a new business model. We're going to call this MetaFox. And now here I can also put the context. And the question I'm wondering is, when I have something for context, now in the world of AI, anything you type anywhere in this tool is training the AI. So I can't just type anything. So for now, I want to leave it empty because I'm going to get there faster, more unique way. Here's your business model. It's a blank business model canvas and it doesn't say anything. So we can spend the next 10, 20 minutes one by one to create it. But why would I? So what I've done is I went into ChatGPT and I said, give me a business model using the business model canvas as a framework for this company. And in there, I put your link to your website. Now, what I will do here is I will go and import this link. Basically now I'm going to take a prompt that is recommended in Rapid Visual, and I'm going to go back to my ChatGPT. Eventually in a few days, actually, we're going to have this built into the tool itself. I can see here already, your business model, but I'm going to drop this prompt in here and I'm going to send it. So what will happen now is that ChatGPT already did the hard work of going through your website and understanding what you do and reconfiguring that as a business model canvas.
Can you briefly explain the business model canvas for anybody who's not yet familiar with the framework?
Absolutely. So for what we see here now is basically a function of probably 4 hours of a workshop, but we just did it in less than 4 minutes, right? So we have the value proposition there's 9 elements to the business model canvas, and they're used to describe any business on the planet. And so it's the 9 ingredients to make a business. And you have the value proposition. What is it that you offer to your customer segments? So who are the customer segments? And what revenue are you creating for them? Not how much, but revenue stream. What's the revenue type? Subscription, transaction. Then you have your distribution channels. How do the customers reach out to get access to your value proposition? And the MetaFox website is your official website and social media. This is how they reach to you. For example, if we take one customer segment is professional coaches, they want to come to you because they want to have access to visually engaging coaching tools, which are cards, cubes, and visuals to aid reflection and discussion. This is what you offer to that audience. You also offer that to corporate trainers. And you also have an additional customer segment, the educators and facilitators, to whom you offer free educational resources. At least that's what the AI understood reading your website. And it's a nice brand audit here. The channel is your official website, which I'm going to do some color code correction because it signifies relationships here. And also your social media. That's how people will reach to you or reach to you currently. And what you offer to create relationships with these customers are their newsletter and free content that you deliver. And also you offer customer support. So if we stop here as we explain the business model canvas, so what do you get as a revenue? You have product sales that come from your visually engaging coaching tools. And you have partnership development that explains collaborations on custom tool creation, which is derived from your educators and facilitators customer segment.
Yeah. So in the end, the core of our business model today is that we are a publisher. So that means we sell print learning materials, you could say. And those are sometimes created in collaboration with authors or with subject matter experts. And they co-create products.
And the partnership, does that come with a co-sharing agreement for revenue?
Oftentimes, yes.
Now, what we just explained here, these 5 boxes are what we call the front stage of the business. This is what everybody can see, including the AI by going to your website. Now, the AI now will make a guess as to what the backstage looks like. So the AI is asking, what are the key activities that folks at MetaFox do really well to be able to sustain this business model? Things like product design and development, which I know you do. E-commerce management, which I also know you do because you're selling stuff online. And community engagement, which you obviously must do, especially with your educators and facilitators. So it's kind of guessing to say, to be able to give this business model to the world, what are the things I need to be really good at? It's not everything. It's just the key things, usually 5, 6, 7 maximum things. And then you have, what are the key resources that you need to be able to do that? Well, I need a product development team. Without that, I'm not going to be relevant or fresh with what I'm offering to the world. And I need to have a digital infrastructure that's probably going to be one of my cost drivers. If I look at my costs below, you have product development, you have manufacturing and logistics, and you have marketing and engagement. And probably we should also add here IT dev as a cost for all your infrastructure. So that gives us a bit of a sense of what your business model is like, but it also gives us the opportunity to see who do you need to partner with to be able to bring this business model to life. And it says coaches and trainers are customers and partners in some ways. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's quite accurate.
Nice. And then you have, and it says also collaborate on product development and feedback. So you have a little bit of a subnote there that's also used for AI knowledge. And then you have printing and logistics partners, which I'm sure that's a big deal.
We are also selling our products on Amazon. Even though we spend most of our time building our own shop, promoting our own shop, Amazon still is a key partner in our distribution.
Amazon is there now. And now let's also align everything so it looks nice and pretty. And that's what we have, a high level understanding of your business. What can we do from here? Well, the first thing is, we're not going to do this live because I would spend 10, 20 minutes on this, is to go through every single box and refine it. Understand, is it super accurate? Am I happy with this? If I was training a team of McKinsey consultants, would this be the information I would give them or would I correct it? Because if it's garbage in, it's garbage out. And it costs a lot to hire McKinsey. So you would give it as much of your attention as possible. That's the same mindset you need to have here. So once you've done that, let's assume we did, and this is the result of what it looks like.
And I could also do that now if I wouldn't have MetaFox, but if I simply was a coach, a facilitator, I could also feed ChatGPT or Rapid Visual directly my website and get sort of that external view on what is it that I'm doing today and how does this look to the outer world.
Yeah, almost like a brand audit in some ways.
Yeah. Now,
So
I would love
that's one
that to actually expand the business model. So in our case, and maybe that is also something we would actually have in common with our customers, our community, the trainers and the facilitators, is we have an established business, we have a community, and now we would love to build an online course.
Okay, so you would want to explore what it could look like if you were to add an online course to your list of value propositions, and what would that do to the rest of your business model? That's a great strategic question, Tobi. So this is exactly what this is for. And so let's do it in two ways. First, let's see if the AI would recommend it. I clicked on plus on value proposition, and I clicked on generate value propositions. Now, what is happening now? The AI is reading everything that we gave it, and it's saying, if this is the business, what else could they offer that utilizes and leverages the existing infrastructure with few additions perhaps, but kind of makes sense to also add in their suite of offerings? As it's doing that, I'm going to prepare in case it doesn't suggest online courses, and I'm going to write online courses, which I can manually introduce to my business model here. I'm just going to change its color to blue. But before that, we have the results now. You could do an interactive mobile app, customizable workshops, community forums, AI-driven insights, gamified coaching tools, subscription-based content, personalized learning paths, virtual reality experiences, live webinars and events, integration with CRM systems, mental health resources, and cultural sensitivity training. So does any one of these look like what you had in mind, or maybe different, but interesting enough to pursue?
Overall, it's quite an interesting suite of suggestions. So the mental health resources, that's something that we are doing already. We have lots of free PDFs online, and we are also working on our web app and later possibly mobile app. But I think what would be really interesting and maybe also comparable for our audience to go into is the personalized learning, like all the educational offers. And what I see here, which sort of resonates with what we have in mind, is this blended learning offering in a way similar to what we actually discussed about talent hacks on our previous session. So what we have in mind is sort of an online learning offering that is on demand, that I can basically watch on the go. And that is then combined with live online workshops where I can go into practice. And also combines with a community forum where then I can also interact with my peers on the course. I can ask them, hey, how are you doing this? And we have this very social interactive learning experience. That is what we have in mind, and that I can see combining 3 of these post-its.
So that's one way to do it. You kind of take the initiative and say, I want to combine some of these things. I've been inspired. And I wrote based on what you were saying, on-demand online learning blended with workshop as a title description of that. If you're happy with that, we can go with it. Or you could pick any one of these and then make that the thing. So once we put it in, then we go in and say, building community, learners, community. Was there a particular topic you wanted to tackle here to make it more specific?
We're starting out with strengths because the Stronger You card set is one of our best sellers. And we are also building a Strength Explorer assessment feedback app on the side.
Strength Explorer assessment. Okay. So I wrote that in, and that's, again, it's almost like I'm educating the AI now so it can give me better recommendations. And so the first thing I want to do is, well, which is the audience? Are we looking at educators, facilitators, professional coaches? Is it a new customer segment?
That's a very interesting question. What we see with our cards is that they are used by all of these. So I could use them in one-on-one coaching, but I could also use them in a team.
So let's pick one for now to simplify it, and we'll pick corporate trainers.
Yes, let's do that.
So now we see the customer segment details where you can fill in the details of your customer segment, potential customer, right? Corporate trainers, what are their age brackets, their gender, their location, but you don't have to start from scratch. You start from an edit place. So the AI took a stab at what it could look like, and it basically decided to present it to you, and you get to influence that. So what we see now is that the tool went in and decided to basically give you an explanation of the customer segment. So corporate trainers, age 25 to 65, tech savvy education, HR professionals, blah, blah, blah. An example of that audience is Leo Perez, who from New York, And Leo Perez is a seasoned corporate trainer with a passion for innovative learning technology. So it gives you a persona. It's always nice to put a face to the customer segment and a name. And on the right, we see the jobs to be done, pains and gains of this particular person. And that's a tool that's popularized by Clayton Christensen that allows you to explore what are the primary things that they're trying to accomplish in the context of the space of where you're trying to create that innovation. So in the space of online learning, what are the types of things they're trying to get done? For example, design engaging training content, maximize learner engagement, facilitate community building. What are some of the obstacles that might be high dropout rates in training sessions or lack of engagement from participants? And what you do is you go through this in such a way as to accept the recommendations of the AI or decline them, so that by the end of the polishing, you have no more check marks and X marks left on this canvas because you have now transferred ownership to you.
And I guess in reality, I could do that not only based on my own assumptions and biases of how I view the world and my customers, but ideally, I guess I would call up my corporate trainer friend Paris and I would say, hey, Paris, do you have half an hour to maybe define that persona? And you could actually tell me, is that a pain? Is that a gain?
Absolutely. The question is, though, like looking at this again, so I've accepted some of them and declined others. What I've learned in the last year of using this in workshops with teams, when you have a corporate innovation team, usually have about a number of 4 to 6 people. So let's say 5 people. They come up with jobs, pains, and gains that they think this person they don't know may have. Or the AI comes up with the jobs, pains, and gains. What do you think is usually more detailed, more beefy, more qualitative, better overall? Or a large language model that knows everything about these people that's out there in the world, basically, or you and your 4 other colleagues who are guessing. And I found the quality of the output of these workshops to go up 10 times. Even if I sit there as a coach, if I don't know this audience, I can't tell you. But really, it doesn't matter because the job isn't to actually know now. The job is to have a starting place so you can get out of the building and interview people like Leo to find out if what you have is true or not. So this is your preparation. It's not your final output. And to do that, you start to profile the customer. And then the next thing you do is you create a customer value scene. So the way you do that is that you select your value, which is the on-demand online learning blended with workshop. Once you select your value proposition, you also select the job you want to manifest here. So maybe maximize learner engagement and lack of engagement for participants. So once I say, please go ahead and create that storyboard for me, what will happen is that the AI will create a visual storyboard that you can then use in your interviews with these potential customers to explain to them what possible value you might be able to offer to them.
So I could start even from the jobs, pains, and gains canvas, or also from that scene, I could then start crafting my landing page where I would put out the offer, or go into interviews with that and say, hey, do you actually see that as a realistic description of your reality?
And I wouldn't do a landing page first. The first thing I always tell people to do is get out and talk to people. But when you do, bring some stuff with you. Have a profile that you can align on to see if they really have those jobs, pains, and gains, and have some value scenes, maybe 5, 6, 7 of them that show what value you want to communicate. The moment of need is basically the one area where you kind of articulate where the problem is. Today is the second area where you articulate what do they do today. And tomorrow is what can happen with your value proposition in mind. But it's told as a cartoon. So the moment of need. I wish there was a way to make these sessions more engaging. But today, at least they're paying a bit more attention today. You know, if you were to do it as a workshop, maybe. Tomorrow, this online workshop is fantastic. Everyone is participating and learning so much. So now you have a place again of edit. You can change the narrative, you can change the script, you can change what the image looks like. You have a starting point. I see that 8 out of 10 times it's good enough as it is, but we started a bit more generically. So, making it explicit is key. Maybe it's a feature of the thing you have in mind that we want to test here. But we also dressed it with the job and the pain of engagement that was inspired by the profile that was driven by the AI's knowledge of that particular customer segment. There's so much knowledge that was in play to get us to where we are right now. We're going to get out of the building. We're going to talk to these people to see how correct or incorrect we might be. And that's the learning process. Now, with that in mind, a final thing I want to show to you is that you do this for your customer segments. You do this for your value propositions. You create your multiple value scenes. But eventually, what you want to eventually get to is a conversation around your business model. What else needs to happen in your business model? How can I strengthen this particular business model? And let me show you something that's in that direction. So what I'm showing you now is back to your original business model. I opened a feature called strategic lenses. And here's where you have access to thought leaders. Like, for example, Michael Wilkins, who is a partner of mine in Denmark, who's come up with a concept called resilience as a strategy, which is all about improving your revenue so that you have not more revenue, but better revenue. A subscription-based, fixed-based revenue is 20 times the value of revenue that's generated by a lot of sales effort every year. That's unpredictable. So this is a huge win for leaders who say, I want to improve the valuation of my company. I want to get more stability and predictability in my revenues. Everything is good news when you have better revenue, not just more revenue. So what's happening right now is the AI is having a conversation that almost feels like 8 AI agents walk into a coffee shop and have a coffee together talking about MetaFox. It takes around 10 minutes for this conversation to finish because there's a deep research component going on between multiple models, AI models, about your business. One of these AI models is Michael's AI twin. So he's in there driving that conversation, facilitating a conversation with other AI agents who are going to hopefully give us some really interesting insights as to what could you do to your business to drive better revenue. So now what you can see is that the conversation is finished. We have 7 different criteria: customer retention, prepayment, contract length, code development, data and digitalization, community and fans, personal relationships. And you also have a score. So let's go to the one that has the least score, which is contract length, which is -3, and unpack that a little bit. Now, what we see here is the key question that was asked by the AI, which was how much of the revenue for the coming year is on fixed contracts? On a -3 to +3 scale, it's -3. Why? All current revenue streams are one-off or variable sales with no legally binding multi-year or minimum commitment contracts, which makes sense. That's what we put into the business model, right? But it also gives you advice. What could you do? Design an annual subscription or licensing model for physical and digital tools. Well, how? Well, guess what? If you look at the business model, it's giving you what those shifts might look like. For example, an annual subscription license would be added to your revenue streams. Subscription onboarding and account management will be added to your customer relationships. Automated renewal portal will be added to your channels. And if you like what you hear and you read all that stuff, then you go apply shift and then you get your leadership team on board and you get to go out there and talk to more customers to figure out if they will pay for this. But now you just received incredible advice. And this is just one of many pieces around better revenue and multiple lenses around other configurations. You end up at a place where, you're having a conversation with an AI model that admittedly has more information about the world than I ever will, but has been trained on my knowledge so that it has guardrails to make the advice specific. And so the idea is that using AI as an empowerment and an enabler and an enhancing tool is what has been referred to by our clients as thoughtful use of AI. It's a tool that helps you design a better strategy. Why? Because it actually comes up with better alternatives. And that's the idea behind Rapid Visual and the work we do there.
Yeah, and I love how that basically prompts us into the direction that we were already going ourselves. Like this idea of, okay, we now have people who buy one-off card sets, and it would be great to, on the one hand, train them to actually get even more out of the product, and then also ideally convert that in a community and a online learning environment that is so useful that people are willing to pay a subscription fee, for example. And I guess that's where we are also. But what I hear is now, okay, it's all nice and fancy, the AI, but it doesn't replace talking to customers. We would actually hop on calls and talk to people. Look, what do you think about that moment of need that I show you on this small prompt picture that I created with Rapid Visual? Does that moment of need actually arise in your reality?
Yeah, 100%. It doesn't replace talking to customers. It doesn't replace people-to-people interaction, but it accelerates it. And so what we're looking at now is, could you get a phone call from an AI agent who has been trained on this methodology and this content to run an interview with you? So you're not talking to me as a human, but the AI agent is talking to a human customer. The answer is yes, we can do that right now. And the person will know they're talking to an agent. Some cases, they won't even figure out the difference because it sounds so good and so real. But that means that, is that enough? And my answer is no. You still need to pick up the phone and call some people. But whereas in the past, you had to talk to a statistically significant number of 25 customers, now you could run 200, 1,000 interviews led by AI agents in 1 hour because you hit a button and 1,000 interviews happen concurrently, you get the data, you have the ability to course correct, but you find where it's even more interesting of a rabbit hole to go into, and there you call them yourself. So there's a sequential change that's going to happen into how we create focus. I don't have to do everything from scratch all the time.
And I can see that example of yours applicable when I'm, for example, Nestle, and now I'm calling up all the customers who buy my, I don't know, chocolate powder or whatever. How would it look like in our small business? We have a bit of an email newsletter where we could maybe send a survey. In that survey, we could ask, like, what are your big ideas? And would you be up for a phone call? Would that be a more realistic scenario? Or how could we scale this down again to our, I'm a coach, I'm a facilitator, I want to put out an online offering?
I think the novelty of the times we live in right now actually is an opportunity. So if you were to send a newsletter to your followers and say, we're conducting some experiments because we're exploring a new offering. And in order to help us refine our experiments, we would like for the first 100 people who click here, you will get a phone call from an AI agent for 10 minutes. I think 100% of the people will, there's going to be a waiting list because people just want to see what that looks like. But that's a great experiment, right? You get 100 conversations happening live, and then you get the results. And then you say, based on that, you train the agent when they call them to say, do I have your permission for Tobi and his team to follow up after our conversation if needed? The person might say yes or no. For those of them who said yes, depending on what the content was, you then have the permission to just pick up the phone and call them because they said so. So it actually gets easier to have interviews when you have the AI agent do the filtering for you.
Yeah. And just a week ago, I actually set up a Google form, a simple Google form asking a bunch of questions. And you are telling me now I could also have an AI agent call them with Rapid Visual.
Yeah. Rapid Visual doesn't do the calling just yet. We work with other tools right now because we're focusing on the IP. But yeah, ideally that would be the end place. But right now there's other tools that we go to get that done. You mentioned Google Forms, and the realization is that Google is suffering right now. The Google search engine, when was the last time you Google stuff? Like that's an index card of all possible places you can look for the answer. And why not go to ChatGPT or Gemini or any one of the other ones? It gives you the answer. Site traffic is suffering right now. Web SEO and everybody who's doing that, they're suffering right now because I don't know if we realize it. The search engine is gone. You have a search brain that's going to give you the answer and where they got it from. Why would you need to go through all that? So a Google form to people very soon, if not already, is already an old tool. And they're changing in front of our eyes, but I think the novelty can be used as an opportunity and you can leverage that right now. I've just created today, this morning, an agent you can talk to live. So if you want to talk to the CEO of Rapid Visual, I have an interactive version of myself. You can ask me questions and I will respond back, but I might be with my kids having fun. And on the website, it's not me, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yesterday I had a conversation with Delphi AI with Lenny, the guy from the Lenny product podcast, giving me advice on my product question.
And that's a good reminder, actually. One of the things that we do a lot of when we do workshops under Talent Hacks, and I stand there for a day or 2 days giving content, having workshops, everything I say is being recorded. That's then being transcribed. And that's then used as knowledge, which is used to train an AI agent, which is then sent by email for the client to go back to that agent anytime they want and ask questions about the workshop. When in our history did we have an opportunity to do Q&A unlimited? And it's fascinating. People will go to that thing and ask questions. What Paris said about this thing, can you remind me? And then not only does it answer questions about the workshop, it also starts giving recommendations, maybe cross-selling, upselling, figuring out opportunities for more value creation for us. How long does it take me to make that agent? 5 minutes. And it's the ultimate sales agent. It's a different world. And it's kind of like, if you're still wondering, but I'm not a Teams person, come on, get over it. The tech stack is evolving in front of our eyes and you need to be relevant because it's not a choice. It's a survival tactic. And that's my mantra for over a decade now. Being relevant is not a choice. It's a survival tactic.
Yeah. And yet, if I invite our customers on having these online workshops, many of them still struggle just using Miro. So I think this whole process, it will also take some time. Just like the pandemic hit and then people had to figure out, I have to mute myself on Zoom when I'm on a call with many people. I guess this will be a process. So I would like to take a step back from the geeky tech tools and get it back to the craft. From your experience working with Rapid Visual, but also maybe even in the physical session room, working with such a customer segment canvas, What do you see are common mistakes?
The biggest mistake is that people look at it as a planning tool. And so they go into execution mode. And innovation is a mindset. There's a methodology that helps you carry out that mindset, but innovation is a mindset. And so it's the job of the trainer to explain that and prime the audience to be ready for that, because very few people in the world have a job of being an innovation manager, innovation director. Most people think of, I have a job description that says, here's the jobs to be done. And nowhere in that job description is there, I need to fail. But innovation comes with that job description. The job description is simple. Get out there and fail as much as possible, as quickly as possible, and as cheaply as possible. And if you do that all the time, you will stumble upon something very interesting that's going to be called Gmail.
Scenario for failing would be I kind of prototype my idea for my online course using the business model canvas as we just did. Then I hop on a call with one of my customers, of my clients, of my community members. I show it to them and they tell me, no, not really interesting. I wouldn't spend money or time on that. That would be such a desirable failure that you talk about.
It would be a data point. You would then have to question it rigorously to understand, were you talking to the right customer segment? Is that enough data? Should I try another experiment? Am I missing something there? When we were testing our Working with Humans course, one of the things we wanted to test from people who had taken the beta version was pricing. So we reached out to them with their permission to say, you're getting in the beta, but we're going to need to talk to you for an hour when you finish the beta. And you're going to need to answer to a survey. That was the contract. And so they're responding to this survey. One of the questions was, if you were to pay for this from your disposable income, what would be the maximum amount of money you would pay? And obviously pricing questions are tricky. A bad question would be, how much would you pay? A better question is, what's the maximum you would pay? So there's some nuances, and experience tells you where to be careful. And then we were expecting people to say around $800 to $900, but 20 people responded, and the average was around 85. And that was a really bad shock to the system. We're wondering, oh my goodness, we were not creating as much value as we were expecting. And at that point, based on what you said before, I should have said, fail, move on. But we didn't. We said, let's actually talk to somebody and say, why did you say what you said? And we got on the first interview and said, John, why did you put $95? And John said, because I tried to put a lot more, but the field was limited. The maximum I could put was 100. And I go, oh my goodness, we've just stumbled on a system failure. And although we had rigorously tested it, we hadn't cleaned our cookies, and we should have checked from an incognito browser on our survey. We had limited them. So that created a frame of mind. So if they think that it's worth $100 maximum, I'll put 95. So in that context, 85 was good as an average. Then we fixed the mistake. And then the responses came back again. After 10 people, the average was 23. And now we go, it's a failure. So we get on a call and ask another person, why did you say 23? And he goes, well, there was, how in a field you sometimes have an example answer? It said, for example, 27. Well, I'm like looking at the team, like, you guys, are you kidding? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. What happened here? Some system error caused, it was Typeform we were using, I think, to actually put in an example that we didn't put. So we created anchoring, psychological anchoring. If we think its example is 27, I'll put 23. We go for a third round, 1,200, 1,100, 1,300, same course, same value. Just the psychology behind the testing changed the output. And that was amazing to see. So eventually we got on interviews and we validated with everybody, including the ones that said 100. Once we explained, we said, hey, can you take another step? How much would you pay? Of course, they didn't put as much as the other people put, but they were already primed in a way that we could not be corrected because that created a bias.
Mm-hmm. And yet, when we discussed the creation of your Working with Humans online course on our last session, you said that your bestseller is still the B2B blended learning offering. So B2C, I just buy and do the self-service course, doesn't really seem to work. Like, how do you explain that?
One way I can explain it and one way I can't explain it. The way I can explain it is we haven't put enough effort to promote the B2C. So I can understand that. But nevertheless, maybe there could have been some organic traffic. The way I can't explain it is that there's a lot of experiments that still need to be done with users to understand their willingness to pay. I mean, the course is quite expensive compared to the sea of online courses on Udemy, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning. You're talking double digits, right? Like $20, $9. And this is, 3 digits. And so it's obviously a big ask. So to have the right to ask for that much money, you need to create the right priming. community-based or referral-based, for people to see there's that much value in that I would pay from my disposable income to buy it. It's a difficult nut to crack, but we're working on it.
Yeah. And then there is also offers like Masterclass, right? That you're also competing with. And I guess, yeah, that is a very tough sort of product market fit question. How do you frame your offer to compete in that space? And would it maybe be even a strategy for you to go for €100 pricing and just try to convert many more people than selling it for 800?
100% you're right. Yes, it would. I mean, if we can drop the price to even, €50 to say, I'd rather have thousands of people using it at €50 than 100 people using it at 100 or 200 or 300. Obviously, so it's a profit maximizing curve equation thing, that the only way to get to that is actually running those experiments, A/B testing, different markets, different languages. Maybe it's a cheap course that can get you to have a teaser so you can get into something bigger. Then we can sell a B2B one that's way more expensive, that has a lot of high touch stuff in. So it's not easy. And when you see a success, people think it's overnight, but there's years of failure before that success.
Well, yeah. So good luck on that journey. We will also go on that journey and try to build minimum viable offers, test them, experiment. And I think, yeah, my main takeaway here is talking to customers.
Absolutely.
I also would like to run a small experiment, and that is a lightning round of questions where I will ask you a bunch of questions and you take just a minute to answer to them. And that's how we'll round up the session.
Sounds good.
A book or thinker who's shaped your facilitation and consulting?
It wasn't a book. It was more the exposure to other facilitators and thinkers from the strategizer ecosystem. There's expectations when you do innovation type of work. It is world-class, best class. You cannot go to a boring innovation workshop, right? So being in that world, I think just uplifted me and everybody else around me as well in how we actually consider training and development.
Mm-hmm. A workshop fail?
Okay. We were recently doing a workshop with a pharmaceutical company. They were going to be designing custom GPTs using ChatGPT. We made sure they had access to ChatGPT and we actually bought the licenses for them. We were then at the hotel and we only checked the software limitations, but their computers were hardwired to block it. So suddenly I'm at the place where we have 7 teams and they're supposed to work on this. That's going to take the rest of the day. And it was midday and nobody could go to ChatGPT. And thankfully, the AV company, they had some personal computers. They had other computers. Some people had personal computers. The hotel had a computer. And within 10 minutes, we sourced 7 computers that didn't have the limitation. We fixed it. And because we fixed it, I can laugh about it.
Your go-to energizer activity?
I have people talk to people. So basically anything that gets them to have something valuable to say to somebody sitting next to them or somebody sitting away from them, and usually standing. Whether that's a coaching moment or whether that is just basically introducing themselves, anything that gets people to stand up and get the blood flowing and have a conversation. I know not everybody likes it, but nobody regrets doing it.
Must have in your facilitation kit?
I've always used Statis. And for me, it's been a lifesaver in so many ways to just be able to pull out Statis and just go on any surface and start to workshop things out. And it's almost like we always said with Dino, my business partner, that as long as we have a block of Statis and a marker, it doesn't matter what the situation is, we will workshop the solution out. And that's it.
Awesome. Statis, electrostatic notes. Favorite question to ask in a workshop?
To get asked to me or for me to ask participants?
For you to ask participants.
What is one juicy thing about you? And so I ask this as a way to, in the introductions, and when people kind of get to know each other, I tell people that raise your hands if you have kids. And then a lot of people put their hands up. And then I shock them by saying, I don't care. I have kids too. It's not interesting. Who has pets? They put their hand up like, I don't care. But now tell me something juicy that I'll talk about during the break because you shocked me. And then some incredible stuff comes out. And then you have conversation that kind of resonates for days.
Nice.
I love that because it also gives me a good laugh as well.
Okay. The most surprising lesson you learned from a participant or client?
I guess there's so many from learning from clients. In my mind, I have the boot camps. We're doing a series of workshops for a cruise company. So we had captains of vessels in our audience. And there were some moments of wisdom that kept coming from that particular audience where you would see the most powerful people, and a captain is literally God on a vessel. They can decide to marry you, bury you, everything, right? There's no other position that gives you that much power on a vessel. And they were the most quiet and attentive and listening folks that you would otherwise think would have every legitimacy to be the opposite. And I always took note of that, thinking that that's incredible the humility and the humbleness of people who have seen power and used it and have it, but in a learning situation could actually basically shut up and listen. It was an indirect lesson, but it's one that I got again and again because I worked a lot in shipping, and it's fascinating to see that. Maybe not every captain is like that, but the ones that I've met validated that for me quite a few times.
Wow. Thank you. Okay, as a very last one, I have a question for you that comes from one of my previous guests, Todd, who is a coach that is very much into presence and listening. He's doing energy work. So not on the innovation end, but more on the inner work. And he's asking you, who are you not being?
I am not being my 7th grade math teacher. And that's the person that had an impact in my life because the way he treated me made me hate math. The way he asked me questions or pointed at me made me hate an entire discipline. At which point I realized the incredible power that comes with educators and parents. And so I tried to be sensitive to the power that's bestowed on anybody standing on a stage and commanding an audience. Because in those moments, those few hours, you have incredible energy to transfer to those people, and you can do it both positively, neutrally. So I try as much as I can not to be that guy. And I feel I haven't, hopefully. But maybe we have to do an experiment to ask people to see what they think.
Thank you.
Beautiful question.
Beautiful. What question would you load?
Okay, that one for me is, I love this feature, by the way, that you added to your podcast. Kudos to you for that. And one question would be, what is one experiment you can run tomorrow to test your most critical hypothesis or assumption you're making about the way the world is?
What is an experiment that you can run to test the hypothesis you make about the world? This is the question Paris leaves for our next guest. I'm very curious for that. And maybe it's also a good question for you to take home. What is a test offer that you can put out there very simply? And which client or customer can you maybe quiz for how they actually see the world, and which pain points make them look for someone like you? Doing this more is definitely one of my biggest learning points for today, besides all the fancy tools that Paris showed us. And nevertheless, I'll for sure also keep playing with Rapid Visual a bit more. And if you also want to do that, go to rapidvisual.ai and try everything for free for a week. Paris created the code MetaFox15 for the entire Making of a Coach community to get 15% off the pro version. Thanks for today, for staying until the very end of this slightly different episode. And I'd be curious, do you want more of this? Is it practical to have these very video-driven episodes? Or should we simply stick to audio on the podcast and publish those videos separately? Let me know what you think about this or give any other feedback. I'd be super curious to hear from you on tobias@metafox.eu. Looking forward, all the best on your journey, and until next week, bye-bye.
I'll make it as a coach, light the spark inside, empower every soul to turn the tide. I'll make it as a coach, help others grow, changing lives with every story I know.